Okay.
What we're doing right now is waiting for John Brakey to come out with some pillows, but in the meta sense, we're heading out to Massachusetts to try and make sense of an election. We're going to look at the electronic debris afterwards that any electronic voting system generates, and we're going to try to figure out what actually happened, and more than that, whether there were actual threats to the election in some of the smaller counties. One of the things we worry about in Massachusetts is there's over 350 very small election jurisdictions. And these little tiny outfits don't have a lot of technical chops. And there's a risk that they're the known fact, they're outsourcing a huge percentage of their process to outside vendors and not really owning the process themselves. And that is an opening for fraud.
Let's use Boston as an example. It's the biggest area around. You have 254 precincts, okay? And the voter database is about 356,000, okay? Let's say the next biggest city, this is interesting, okay? And that Martha won big, I'm talking about size-wise. Now, I search my data out and I break it down to different columns. And I can see Cambridge. Now, that's a pretty Democratic area, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Yes. Cambridge. Yes for turnout for both voters. In this election, this is freaky. We know that the presidential was 235,579. In the special election, Martha won 105,000 to 46,000. That means the results were like 70% to 30%, okay? 43% of your voters turned out. I don't know, 06, but 08, 66%. Yeah, 148 is about the same, you could say.
We do youth organizing, and none of our youth are here today because it's too late in the day, but they will be here later.
Yeah.
And this is our big voting rights mural, and you've got Abraham Lincoln and John Brown and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Ida Wells and all those folks, Cesar Chavez, and the Declaration of Independence and all of that stuff.
Jefferson.
You know, like any democracy organization, we're always desperate for donations and interns and volunteers and all of that stuff. One of our big focuses right now is making sure that everybody gets counted in the census. So we're deeply concerned about an undercount and systematic bias and all of that stuff. So I started learning about campaign finance reform and media control and stuff like that. Got interested in all those issues. Eventually became a political activist. I spent a couple of years up here working for nonprofits and campaigns. And then in 2000, I worked for Al Gore in New Hampshire. And then after the election, got the call to fly down to Florida and participated in the recount down there. Where I learned that whatever the situation was a lot worse than we had thought.
Okay. Let me ask a couple of questions specifically. One of the things that was concerning us is there's no good data right now on provisional voting, how provisional gets handled in Massachusetts. Pew Report has got state-by-state reports on provisional vote handling, and Massachusetts would not submit any data.
Right. So the Secretary of State's office in Massachusetts has historically been very reluctant to provide any public data that's not absolutely positively required by law.
But this is required by law.
Right. So even then, they've had several entanglements with the federal authorities about that sort of thing. They're very slow to release data. For another example of that is that in many states, after an election, you can swiftly request the precinct-by-precinct returns on a statewide basis. You can't get that in Massachusetts.
You can't, is right.
So what we do in Massachusetts is we have to call every city and town and ask them individually for the spreadsheet of their results.
351.
Yes.
We've been doing it.
Right. It's a terrible system.
The Secretary of State has complete control over elections.
Sure.
And there's 10 out of 50.
Right.
And in those states, we've been watching for a long time. I forgot that Massachusetts is one because I couldn't believe Massachusetts could be.
Right.
And because we requested before the election, we put a press release out, and then we sent a letter to the Secretary of State asking that the memory cards be preserved, and he goes and preserves the databases from LHS because we know how the system is fatally flawed.
Right.
Well, let's back up a second. Do you know who LHS Associates is?
Sure.
Okay. If you look at the hand count precincts, and we're going to have to ask some questions about this, those tended to vote Democrat in this most recent election, whereas the machine counts in aggregate went Republican.
Right.
Now, the hand count precincts, are they small and rural?
They are. They are generally some of the very smallest communities in the state.
See,
and you would presume that perhaps they would vote Republican. I mean, it's interesting. Do you have any of the names of those hand count precincts? If not, I can get them right here.
I sent you the Excel, and in the Excel is every one broken down by category.
The EAC's own website listing provisional voting for 2006 general, state by state, claims that there was only a total of 350,000 or less votes across Massachusetts. Now that's crazy.
Yeah, and we know that's wrong.
Okay,
No.
so the data being provided by the
mean-
Secretary of State
These are all
to the
hand
EAC,
counts right here. There's 71 of them.
Right. Okay, let's take a look.
And then, let's just show the end result here.
He needs a name. He needs.
I know that, but I'm just saying is that with 55, averaged out 51, 47.
Right.
Okay? And then,
Almost
I want you to
52.
give an overview. These are your paper count ES&S machines, okay? We know exactly the number of those, okay? And that went this way.
Right.
Now we're going into the D-bolts, all of them. And it was the late ones and this, okay?
Early, there was debold counties that reported their results fairly quickly,
And
ones
late.
that reported the results fairly slowly.
Right.
The debold counties that reported slower tended to go Democrat. The ones that reported faster, the majority,
And what we
tended to
call
go
late
Republican.
is that when a hand count comes in first over a machine, okay, it's a simple ballot. I like it.
You call that, that
Yeah.
seems kind of slow.
Right.
It may not mean anything, and none of this may mean
Right.
anything, but
So,
it's
I mean-
areas we need to look at.
My take, and we've backed a bill in Massachusetts that would require random paper audits.
Which we haven't
You
done.
know.
We've run a lot through it.
Yeah, and we've been opposed in that bill by the Secretary of State's office, which opposes, basically argues that they're unnecessary and costly.
Yeah, the biggest part that scares me is we've got confirmation that Massachusetts Secretary of State's office and most of the election officials are very secretive on public records. That's never a good sign. We expect Utah to be worse, but this is a bad scene. We also have confirmation that the smaller election agencies don't have a lot of technical chops. He hadn't made the connection yet that meant that LHS was running the elections instead of the actual election officials. But when we pointed out to him the possible connection, he looked concerned. It's a giant sword.
This is the libertarian part of the
No, this
That's
is
all it is.
something so bad only a government could have come up with it. I'm telling you, it's ghastly. I'm telling you.
Okay, Jimmy, I still understand this, okay? We've gone from one place to the other, and all we're getting reports on is that we have to see Secretary of State Galvin to find out how many provisionals and how many vote by mail absentees there were. I find that very troubling. I've gone back in the records since 2004, 2006, 2008, and I don't find any breakdown of these things. Let's say, for example, if I live in Arizona, which I do, I decide to move to Massachusetts. I go to Massachusetts, I register a vote. In the system, they know I've moved, and they can track. And you know, my concern with vote by mail is abuses that could be happening, and which is going to be the hardest part of the work that we do, is to understand how vote by mail could be manipulated.
If you look at the law itself, they were very specific on, we're going to limit the power of law enforcement to do secret recording, and that's how the law was mainly written. So what's happened now is we have new technology that allows us to monitor law enforcement, allows us to monitor public officials, and Massachusetts has shut that all down. In doing so, they've created a de facto right to verbally abuse citizenry by cops and by public officials. Like that idiot yesterday who was joking around about us getting fed to the fishes.
That's right.
You won't hear that kind of thing
No, that blew my mind.
in Arizona because we could be recording.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Somebody's got to rethink the Massachusetts laws, no question. Bill, here's the deal. A lot of secrecy in election records in general. Just across the board, they're secretive. The MA Secretary of State's office is actually in violation of HAVA and not reporting data on provisional ballots. He's supposed to be giving full reports, and the data that they are getting is very sketchy. When Pew Foundation contacted him for the same info, they got completely stonewalled.
Yeah.
We also found out LHS Associates is running things even worse than they thought. They're not only managing the counties that do debold election systems, it's also ES&S as well. So that's, about 95% of the voting population. The only thing they don't run is some of the very, very small hand count jurisdictions, but that's a tiny fraction of the vote.
What I found, that also working with Jimmy here, I can't find out information about provisional ballots, even from the 2008 election. We were in the Boston's election department, and we asked, and he says, well, you have to get a records request to get that. And that's something that's very, very public that the newspapers should have done. And then going back and looking, Sandra did research, is that Galvin did not average, under HAVA, you're given so much money to educate the public about what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do it. It's like Greek here, provisionals. For us, we expect and we measure with them. They're not showing up here, and it looks like they suppressed the cities really bad. The turnout in Boston is 351 jurisdictions for voting, right? Boston finished 17th from the bottom. They're the largest city. And the turnout here was between 77% to 28%, depending on what part of Massachusetts. And the blue areas were hit hard. That sounds weird, doesn't it?
Well, on their public records request, do they have time requirements or delay like the feds do with FOIA?
Well, they can. They're not supposed to delay past whatever it actually takes them to produce the records, though. That's a good thing. It's kind of a long story, but in short, I asked them for the raw databases off the server, and they said, we don't have those. So I went down and talked to him, and I said, well, wait a second, you have a debold central tabulator machine, right? Yeah. So you own that computer? Yeah. Well, by the time the conversation was over, they had to admit that the reason they didn't think the files were on there is they don't run their own central tabulator. LHS Associates staff do it all. So they didn't even they didn't know what an MDB file was, and therefore they couldn't immediately respond to the request.
Coakley conceded before they even counted the ballots, so they don't even require that there apparently.
Apparently not.
Well, I'm actually serious about this. These guys are saying such weird things, and in some cases such threatening things, right there openly. I'm about tempted, next time we go back to Boston elections, which is due, I believe, Tuesday, I'm thinking go ahead and wear a wire. And if they want to try and extradite my butt back to the land of cactus in Tucson, good luck with that. Because what they're doing here is just crazy. And I don't know, somebody's...
But we wouldn't use it until we got back to Tucson, let them extradite us back from Tucson.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, then, yeah, it doesn't sound like such a good idea. I'm not sure what anybody's going to say, and you can't use it, so what the hell?
Yeah,
But,
good.
Oh, we can put it on TV for all I care.
It's awful important we meet you because, you know, with these kind of processes, anytime we can find a geek, we're so happy because it does take a geek to help other people understand the geek Greek language, what's going on. And you know, because after we're done here, you know, we're off back to Washington, then off to Texas, and then we'll be back here in September for the primary.
Which means we could stop in LHS around 4 o'clock or so.
Yeah, we'll schedule it somewhat. Or 3.
And then,
Well,
whatever.
like I said, well, he said,
So are you
he
just
said let
gonna,
people know where we are when we do that.
like, show up and knock on the door
They won't
and
wonder,
say?
like,
But
Incredible.
what's your plan? Are you just gonna show up and knock on
Yeah.
the door and say,
yeah.
we
And then we
want
want to really figure out what the law is, because, you know, we want to go in some of these departments. If it's a public area, you should be able to film.
both Jonathan and I have mostly been working on a national level, and least of all as local Massachusetts, on local Massachusetts elections, partly because there's just been so much more need elsewhere. And also, up until now, it didn't seem like there was an urgency in Massachusetts, even though we knew that LHS was the provider of the programming and the maintenance and all that. Usually, if you want to get information about an election, you go through the county, and here you have to go through each individual city or town. That's what I meant by runs its own election, not that they know any more than the elected officials or appointed officials in any other
Well, you know,
place.
the kind of thing that I'm seeing thus far, for a short time, that's where it's so important to get feedback from you guys, is it looks like to me that the clerk will go ahead and organize the poll workers and get the precinct lined up, and then LHS comes out and they put these machines there, okay, the Diebold optical scanners. And then that machine will print a tape and they call in the results to the clerk's office, which we like part of that process, I want you to know that. And we like the idea that even the absentee ballots are brought there and put in, and they try to get everything handled that route.
Boston, the city of Boston may use central tabulators, but there may not be any other city or town in Massachusetts that does. That they just get accrued at the town clerk or city clerk's office.
The one thing that we do have, that we didn't have 6 years ago in '04 when some of us were starting out in this, is that we do know each other, and we do, have a sense of who else is out there working. Even if half of us are exhausted, frustrated, burned out, embittered, and sometimes people at each other's throats, at least we know who's who. And who can be counted on, and
what each
that's a big
person's
step
strengths
forward.
are.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are the
Who to look
forensic-
to for, when something has to be done that's forensic, when dumpster diving is called for, when meta-analysis is called for, when public relations is called for. I mean, all that having been said, I mean, we're still, a very, very small tribe, but it is the dimensions of our movement or our effort are a lot more clear. Back in '04, we really did feel. I mean, when I downloaded those exit polls, it was, it was like the James Taylor song. I woke up this morning and I wrote down this song, and I just can't remember who to send it to. I mean, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know, I didn't know Steve Freeman. I didn't know Alistair in New Zealand, and so it was all right. I have this information. It's hot as as blazes, and I had no idea. I mean, Sally and I didn't know each other, so. That has come a long way. We know where to go for things and with things. You've come to Massachusetts. This is a cross-country network that's forming. back to the Massachusetts, this race was not originally considered to be competitive. That was used perhaps as an excuse for there not being exit polls. We really don't know why there were not exit polls. It was not a day on which a whole lot else was happening. The national election pool had a good 2 weeks understanding that the election would be competitive, and they certainly could have gathered together their standard exit polling operation. They have existing connections in every state. During presidential year elections, they're in every state. During off-year elections, they're in every state with a governorship or a senatorial race. So it's not like they'd have to be starting from scratch, and yet there were no exit polls, and that's an open question. That's a bit of a flag. There were also no audits. There's fundamentally no way to know what is in those black boxes other than piles of ballots which are locked up and cannot be examined. And
Yeah, it's
this
supposed to be, I
is
think, a half of a
paradoxical.
percent. I think that's what it was, 0.5% discrepancy allows a recount. And other than
No.
that-
It's 0.5%. There were no audits. There was no
No, I said-
discrepancy. 1/2% margin in the race.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Then there would
if
be-
the race
then
were
there could
within
be.
0.5%.
Yeah,
Now, if
if-
you were rigging a race and you knew that 0.5%
Yeah, so-
allowed a recount, you'd make sure you padded it a little
Yeah,
bit so that
the
wouldn't
question
happen.
is that I have that I find is this I want to ask you is that I'm from a state, Arizona, and of course we under the Department of Justice when it comes for voting, everything we do has to be approved. And I was blown away when I found out that every precinct has a cop at it. He brings the box, stays there all day, and then he takes the box and leaves, and then takes it. And for us in Arizona to have a cop at every precinct, just not the money, it's the intimidation factor, especially in the low income areas of our state. And that we're very conscious. If we see a cop hanging around, we call right away and say, hey, this guy's got to go.
Oh,
The
that's
Democratic
interesting
Party and other
because
parts. I mean,
I don't think,
yeah.
we have,
We have police
We have
at the
police.
Yeah,
precinct.
and they're paid big money.
Yeah.
They get there, they pick it up, they fight
but
to
we
see
don't,
who's going to
I've
get
never
it,
thought
the
of it
job.
where I live as
a
intimidation.
detail.
I thought of it as security.
It's intimidation.
And they are the ones who carry the results, the memory cards, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Probably
they
use
take
the
the
ballots.
box, the ballots,
Yeah,
and
and
they're supposed
carry
to
it
go
to
with
the-
somebody else. But from what I'm
Yeah.
learning, it's not happening. And just to let you know, what flagged me was that somebody, I guess Tony wrote a letter saying needing help, and I was very nervous about this state about a month ago. And what triggered me is I went to Brown's site, and it said order an absentee ballot here. And when I saw that, I go,
Yeah.
oh my God, the disease is hitting
Yeah.
there.
Well, we saw.
And I know that is a trick that they use. Because, my biggest concern is I've done a tremendous amount of work on Voter Vault, and also a third of the monies that went into the Help America Vote Act went for the statewide databases. And let's say Jonathon says, hey, I like Brakey, and they got to go up, I'm going to go work with him in Arizona. You leave here, okay? You register to vote in Arizona. Through the system, it notifies that you've left to take you off the rolls. Maybe that next election, somebody's going to vote for you,
Yeah.
okay? And
You create a space.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We
And that's
saw a
a
lot of
tough
other
one.
groundwork being laid. I mean,
Yeah.
we weren't. Once it came to our attention, we saw
Yeah.
the usual groundwork being laid.
And then-
Suddenly someone has a surge, the momentum's building.
Oh, incredible. We
all
saw the triggers
the
being pushed.
usual-
One thing about Jim March is that he speaks wingnut. And what that means is that I can watch something on Fox TV and I just chuckle it off. He hears the triggers.
It's of critical importance, as is Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision, and everything that impacts on elections. It's been a nightmare. It's been a rolling nightmare for anybody who believes in actually, taking the will of the people, not distorting it with, unlimited funds for propaganda, and not rigging elections besides. But, I think we need to separate these techniques of, pouring in funds and
Media,
strategic
owning the
techniques,
airwaves,
owning the airwaves. Put that in one bucket, and then we have this owning the voting machine companies, and actually, whether that propaganda succeeds or fails, winning elections because you actually just change the votes as needed. These are, they can be complementary strategies by those who have a good overall game plan. about seizing and holding power. But, I mean, we're working in particular on the rather more narrow, specific branch of that, which is what's happening on those memory cards, what's happening inside optical scanners.
Yes.
How are those who are attempting to find out what is going on in those machines being thwarted?
Yes.
Why can't we get a look at it? Why is everything proprietary? Why is there no real investigation? You know, that type of thing. What to make of these anomalies that keep turning up and virtually always are in the same direction.
So you're
The
following the
shift-
anomalies that Bev has pointed out about the 71 hand counts?
Well, we're looking at the hand counts, but I also
No.
did the New Hampshire. I mean, just
Okay.
election after election after election. Proposition 8, our 8,
Yes.
our citizens exit polls.
Always toward the conservative.
2006, landslide denied. I mean, looking at the official exit polls and the analysis there. When we look at competitive elections versus non-competitive elections, and we see this relative red shift affecting competitive or targeted elections we consider were targeted, that were close enough to win with a shift of 5 to 6 to 7% of the vote. If you see one election after another, competitive elections where polling is important, after all, they don't poll elections where it's 80 to 20, they poll elections that are competitive. And you see one after another, mysteriously, and I give the air quotes, shifting in the same direction from what you polled to the official results, and you want to stay in business, you're going to start anticipating that shift. You're going to start building in parameters. Even if you have no idea what caused that shift, you're going to try to anticipate that shift. You're going to say, well, this happened, it happened over and over again. We are going to build something in that takes care of that. So you develop a model, a sampling model, and there is one, it's called the likely voter cutoff model, which shifts your electorate 5, 6, 7% to the right. Now your pre-election polls
They're building this into
are
their polls now.
right. It's
Probably.
built into the
Wow.
pre-election polls.
Wow.
That's
So you
How
have
do they
polls
rationalize that?
because they're getting the election right. See, it's not their
Oh, my
job
God.
to figure out whether elections are being
So they're
run
basically
honestly or
saying
rigged.
that when they poll these people, they're not being told the truth, so they automatically now are building in a right shift?
Yes, fundamentally, that's what
in
we
effect,
believe.
that's
In
what
effect.
happens.
They're sampling in such a way that as the polls that really matter going into elections are not the ones that were taken 2 months before the election. Nobody looks at that. Nobody cares. I mean, there's a lot of things could happen. They're the ones in the week, 2 weeks, 2 days before the election. Those are the ones where your reputation as a pollster is on the line. If you get it wrong in the wrong direction by 6, 7% every election, you're out of business. What are your polls worth? You're out of business. And clearly, if you get it wrong in the wrong direction by oversampling Democrats every election, well, then you're a biased pollster, you're a Democrat. So they saw that was what was happening. And if I put myself in their position, I don't have any proof. I have some fairly strong evidence coming from somebody at the polling consultant for the DNC, who basically said in public that when our polls show our candidate up by 10%, we know it's going to be a toss-up. Now,
I tell my Democrat friends back then, they don't believe it. I'm so glad you're telling me this.
when we asked...
Because this is, and I would like to know more and any writings you have on it, because I'm always telling my people, hey, if we're not up by 15 points, okay, and if they get this thing down below 10, they'll steal it.
Yep.
Right.
Okay?
Yep. The crime in this country, the issue is, how can we hold elections in a democratic country and not know whether our results were accurate or not? Maybe Brown won, maybe Brown didn't win. But we will never know, because the official results are based on something that had zero oversight and never are going to have oversight. The election's over, it's certified, and if I know what happened in New Hampshire after the primary in January, they rewrote over the memory cards within days.
Yeah. And of course, we filed a letter, you and me and others, demanding that the Secretary of State go ahead and secure the databases okay, from LHS and protect the memory cards.
And we'll find out whether that happens or not. But this election is only an example of what's happening everywhere. That the citizens have no way of knowing whether any result is accurate or not.
In Framingham, we have a credible report from a poll worker that at precinct number 6, somebody who is either an election official or an LHS associate staffer came in, grabbed a memory card out of a voting machine, put it in his pocket, and walked out. Simple as that. And there were people objecting, people saying, "What are you doing with that?" And he just ignored them and walked out. What that means, who the heck knows? But there's a particular document that they tend to track here in Massachusetts as a log from the poll workers describing any anomalies. And the log for Precinct 6 is going to be very important in this event. We also wanted to look at them as just a general example of how they do business. I want to look at the contract between them and LHS Associates. We're back to looking at how much control over the process LHS Associates has. And this is not a town that we've done any public records requests with. We're going in cold, try and surprise them. Hopefully we catch somebody who's either honest or off guard enough to let slip some interesting data. So we'll see what happens. Like that. Good enough.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
No, this is the assessors or clerk?
Town clerk.
Town clerk's this way.
Right there.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes. We'd like to use some on-site inspection and public records. Well, a couple of things. The clerk's law from the most recent election.
Are you videotaped?
Yeah. Have a law about on-site inspection of records if it's something you have easily available.
Absolutely, but what we do is because we have so many people requesting public records, we have them put it in writing. We respond within 10 days, and you absolutely can come back here and publicly look at them.
We're out of Tucson, Arizona.
There's a lot of people that are requesting records right now.
Okay. So, well, if it's records that you have easily available, though, you don't make them available?
We have so many public records requests, it wouldn't be fair. Hello. It would not be fair to the people that are requesting it ahead of you, that are looking to do on-site inspections and to get things in writing. So what Massachusetts law requires is that you put it in writing and respond to it within 10 days.
Thank you.
So we need to go to back to the town.
Okay, first let's go ahead and
We've got a records question in front of the town.
yeah.
They're not gonna.
Oh, I know, but let's still get one set up.
One question, do you have listings of provisional ballots that were issued? Do you have a quick report on how many provisionals were issued in the?
I don't. You have to put a public records request in, and we'll be happy to respond to that within 10 days.
Interesting. The interesting part is they won't even listen to what records there are and if anything is easily available. John, I don't think what they're doing is legal, okay? Massachusetts allows for on-site inspection of records during business hours. And this complete stonewall is like nothing I've ever seen. A lot of states have similar laws, and if something is available and you walk in, you'll get it.
Especially if something as simple as what we want. How many people voted by
Better than
mail
that.
or absentee?
Of course, but here's the crazy
There you go.
part. It's okay.
Bye.
But here's the crazy part, okay? They didn't even want to know what records we were asking for.
They just said, just draw it, make a records request.
Just, boom, done.
Yeah. And also, every time I want something, you know what I'm told? Go to the Secretary of State's office.
What they just said,
Well, after you left, that's what they told me.
Well, go to the
If you want to
Secretary of
have
State's office.
information about absentees and provisionals, go to Galvin's office.
Well, we'll do that.
Tomorrow we will.
But the problem is, they just said that they don't have time to create it. If they don't have time to create it, how in God's name is Galvin supposed to get a hold of it?
Right, no, I don't know. They have to have created, because they have to keep a record of that stuff. Is what they have to
Federally
do.
mandated.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody has any idea, except for Galvin, how many goddamn absentee vote by mails there are. Wow, look at this. This is weird. Take the map. Jimmy, you know, everywhere we go, same message over and over. Go see Secretary Galvin to get the information. And, you know, I've had people already get a hold of Secretary Galvin looking for this information before he even got to Massachusetts. And they were told to go to the EAC, the Elections Assistance Commission. And we've gone to the EAC, and we're looking, and we're finding really bad data. We find, in the Pew report, we're not finding anything at all, that he didn't even respond, okay? And then the other one, where's our person here? Oh, ticket. There we go. There's nothing there. And so we're gonna have to see where this thing's gonna lead.
If there's simply some minimal things that we can look at that are easy to get at tomorrow, we don't need to see everything. That's my. But the earliest would be, okay, you can't do anything tomorrow. That's fine. Is there any possibility for Wednesday or Thursday? Okay. Now, again, let me tell you, let me do this. Please just note down what we consider the highest priority, and these are items that should be the easiest to get at. Okay? They should be literally sitting right there in your office. Okay? So, and there are also things that are not going to need a lawyer's review. All right? Like, for example, the thing about the MDB files. All right? You guys are going to probably tear your hair out over that one, and there's going to be discussions with Diebold and LHS and your lawyers and God only knows what. That one's a hairy monster. We know that, okay? But let's see, just to see some poll tapes. Don't even need to see all of them, okay? Just a handful of precincts worth of poll tapes, okay? So we see what they look like. Would be kind of cool. We'd like to see the contract with LHS. Just look it over at your offices, okay? And we'd like to see poll tape. Oh yeah, and summary sheets showing how many how many absentee and provisional ballots you guys processed. I mean, just a one-page summary will be fine. No, there's something about getting data on provisional votes in Massachusetts that seems to be squirrely. We're going into the Belmont Town Clerk's office. We're going to ask about our public records request and a bunch of other issues. And we're trying a soft approach to returning the cameras off. Well, we'll see how it goes. Worst case, you'll interview us outside and we'll see how it went.
Well, Jim, I think that went pretty good. We had a clerk that was nice to us.
Well, nicer than average at least, polite. She at least knew what her own voting machines were by Diebold. And she seems to have the paperwork we need. We'll get it tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We asked her about filming. She says, probably tomorrow morning, yeah, but I'm going to have to talk to somebody about it. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. What I found weird was she's been dealing with LHS so long and prior clerks before her that the contracts are lost in the midst of time. Nobody has the LHS contract. It's just every year, here comes LHS, they do the thing and they go. And nobody knows on paper exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So that's a little disconcerting.
Well, you know what I thought is that the way she's talked about the contract, it was as old as this building, 1882.
God, it's not impossible, I guess.
When I said to her, gee, do you get any idea how many absentee ballots you did? No, I don't. You have to call Secretary Galvin on that. Well, In the newspaper, yeah, that's what she said. In the newspaper, she said 1,100. Why can't she tell me that, okay? One of the reasons I want to go ahead and change things out and move Boston around till tomorrow is because it's going to snow tomorrow, most likely. And the way we get the schedule work, it's going to work a lot better, Jim.
Well, all right, I mean, we can do it. Lawrence, that trouble spot is right next to the city of Methuen with LHS.
Let's do that one today.
We can hit
Far
them all
out.
today.
I like it. We are standing in the parking lot of LH&S. Our producer called earlier and asked if they would go ahead and give an interview and talk about the situation and their role in elections in Massachusetts as well as other states. They refused to go ahead and give an interview because they feel that independent media was not capable of being able to help get their story out. And all they were basically said is that to go to Secretary of State Galvin, which is a common thing that we've heard over and over again in our travels, Galvin, Galvin, Galvin. And the transparency that we're looking for is just not happening in this state. Jimmy, what's your thoughts on it?
Look, we're standing out in front of this small, medium-sized office complex. LHS is next to a Mary Kay distributor. This is not anything that looks like an integral part of Massachusetts elections, but that's exactly what it is. This company has the technical ability to control who wins and loses elections in this state and an unknown number of others. The best way I can summarize the role of LHS in the elections in Massachusetts, if this was 1890 and we were before election machines, before lever machines, before any modern technology, it would be crazy for an election official to pay a private company to take boxes of paper ballots into a back room and count them and come out and tell everybody who won and lost with no backstop against how they behaved. That would be considered crazy back then, and it should be considered crazy now, because that's exactly how this process works. Your vote gets put onto paper, scanned by a machine that they control. The answer comes out under their control, and there is no legal way to look at that paper afterwards in Massachusetts. These people own your vote, right next to a Mary Kay distributorship.
In 0.7 miles, exit right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now it's a lot easier now because they have vote by mail, okay? And now it's a lot easier to stuff. They got one company who programs the ES&S machines and the D-Bolt for just not for the state of Massachusetts. My God, this company does Maine, New Hampshire, and so I guess all of New England. Oh, by the way, we kept saying to her, well, we know you have D-Bolt machines. She says, no, I don't. I don't have D-Bolt machines. She says, I got AccuVote. It's D-Bolt, AccuVote, okay? And we're finding this all over. And, you know, it's just really bizarre. And so that's where hopefully finding the funding to do what we're going to do is going to be very important. But the big thing is what's going on back there. Because, you know, I just talked to Sandra. I saw the documents you sent me. Me and Jimmy haven't had a chance to go through them completely. But maybe it's time to get a press release out and make sure the media knows, hey, these papers were filed today, and over here they're saying it's been 150, and they're trying to say, hey, we want the poll tapes. I mean, lay something out to give the media.
Well, we're back the next morning. We're going to see if they'll let us film. We're going to take a very soft key approach. We're not mad at these people. We'd like to find out more about how their process works, look over the available public records, and if possible, educate them on the known security risks, looking at the California Secretary of State's reports on how their D-Bolt voting systems really work. Hopefully both sides will get educated in a very pleasant manner. That's the goal. Well, we just came out and we're batting 0 for 0 on Massachusetts public officials who were willing to appear on camera. As usual, they're all camera shy in this entire state. It was worth going in. We've got some public records available we didn't have before. We're going to be looking at them in more detail later. We've learned more about how provisionals work, about how the mail-in vote process works, and how voter registration happens around here. was worth doing, and we also found out, surprisingly enough, they run the Diebold GEM software to do a final unofficial tabulation at the end of the event. I don't even know why they would use GEMs around here, but since they do, it's a nice juicy target to go after it, to establish a precedent that that's a public record. As the snow starts to fall here, we're going to get the heck out, try and run south back to our hotel, go over this stuff in more detail, but they're all camera shy, and it's interesting to ask why.
So you wanted to know what I was going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is get a printout of all the election results in the city of Boston. And then I want to find out how they're transmitted to the state, in what form, if it's paper or electronic. And I also want to find a little bit out about how the memory cards are actually uploaded and how they do that and put them into the central tabulator. Hello, how do you do? Oh, John Donovan. Hi.
Yeah, but we're on the public side, and we're shooting ourselves. On the public side?
Can he just film me? If he doesn't film you, is that okay if you just film me?
If he wants to film her, sure.
Okay. Okay, thanks. What we want is to get the election results, which I know they're usually piled up here, but it's so far after the election. You have a little wad of paper for the election results.
You want the results of the last election?
Yeah, for January 19th.
Yeah.
You have a print of what?
The Senate race.
Yeah, the Senate race, thanks.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to also ask you about those results.
Yep, we're going to have our attorney come down.
Okay, that's fine.
No problem. We can get you the results, no problem.
Okay.
Why don't I meet the rest of you guys?
Absolutely.
Jim Marsh, we talked to
Yeah, I talked to you on the phone, Mr. Marsh.
Yeah.
And I'm John Brakey, sir. Real
John
honor.
Brakey?
Brakey.
Nice to meet you.
B-R-A-K-E-Y.
Brakey, okay.
So
Must
you-
be my Boston accent.
Must be. Must
So-
be my main accent. I'm from Maine originally.
Okay.
Why don't you, if you guys, like,
The poll tapes in particular are one way to look for fraud. It's if particular classes of fraud involving what we call the Hursti hack, but modification of data on the memory cards was carried out, you can actually tell right there on the printouts if there's peculiar typos, or if a candidate's name is misspelled on one ticket and not misspelled on another. Those on the poll tapes, that can be very important. Remember, the candidate's name is generated out of the same place in the database, so if it's misspelled on some and not on others, that's a sign of hand modification or the use of two different databases, which in this case would be financially the equivalent of two sets of books. The poll books allow us to tune into how easy it is to cheat in this particular type of election setup. How easy would it be to do what we call the Clay County Shuffle, pile a bunch of crooked poll workers into a particular polling place and then rig the vote at that location. From the poll books, we can try to see how much ballot security is actually in place. How easy would it be for a poll worker to cheat is basically the question. It's very rare to have that kind of problem where poll workers cheat, but there have been a couple of cases of it turn up across the nation, and it's something we always want to look at.
I don't think that this is the right floor.
Now, where's the elections division? Elections division of Gavin's office?
Oh, it's over here. Oh, there it is. It's behind those doors. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Elections, double doors.
And you notice the big sign that says elections?
Yeah. Lack thereof.
They want everybody to feel right at home.
What was the request in regards to?
In regards to the policies and procedures LHS associates lives under when they service voting machines, possible copies of the databases if you have them.
Okay, that would have been handled by our director of legal counsel, who is not in the office at this particular moment. You guys called prior to coming here today?
No, we didn't know exactly when we'd be able to show up. So
But we
simple
didn't
stuff
get a
first.
response, and it was filed a while ago.
Okay,
It was over 10 days ago that we filed
I'm
it.
not really sure. I mean, anything would have gone to the legal counsel. Let me see.
Do you have any of the manuals maybe that are like already printed up or something?
Manuals with regards to what exactly?
Voting system certification, anything regarding how LHS associates or other election systems vendors would, what they're allowed to do.
Okay, hold
Are they allowed
on.
to
Hold on
have-
one second.
Yeah, okay.
That sounds kind of big.
You need more paper?
Okay, you guys, we're just gonna have to wait till Michelle returns.
No problem.
So if you guys, we have, I think there's some chairs. There's two
Sure.
chairs.
So is she gonna be
Oh
back
yeah,
shortly?
she's in the office today. Yeah,
Any
yeah.
chance I could write down the name of that one vendor?
You
said
can
that-
write
that-
it down here on this. Okay.
What was it again? The
Bigelow?
the printing company.
Well, just wait for Michelle.
It
I'd
was-
just like you to wait for
We're just gonna
Michelle.
have to talk to
Bigelow.
Michelle because they've already got the
Yeah.
request in.
Sure, I was just asking who the
No,
ballot
I
printing
understand,
company.
I understand, I
I'd
understand.
like you to talk to
We're just
Michelle.
gonna have you talk to the
Something
appropriate
Bigelow.
director and legal counsel.
She'll talk to you.
She'll be back shortly.
She'll gladly answer all your questions, okay?
It's just frustrating because, you know, when you ask a question and you want to find out a little bit of information, and they stop you and say, we put it in writing, it just ends the conversation. And sometimes getting the information is a conversation, you know. You ask one thing and that will lead to another question you might have to clarify something additional, you know. And if you can't do it in that way and you can only put in your question, then you can't respond back and forth, and everything takes so long because you've got to wait for 10 days to get a response on everything, and then you have to ask your next question, and then you get another response in 10 days, and it slows things down a lot.
They say they don't have any copies of contracts with LHS Associates, Premier/Diebold, ES&S, or any of the other voting system vendors. That's probably correct. Each vendor has got contracts with local election agencies. We asked for copies of certification reports. They do have that stuff going back
You would have that.
a long ways, and 500 pages worth. They want to sell it to us for $100, and we may go for that. I'm going to look at it and see if there's anything interesting in there. I want to do on-site inspection.
Well, we don't have to go back to the
Well,
1970s, do we?
Well, we may want to,
Really?
actually. Yeah, there may be.
Okay.
You can't know where you've been. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been.
Okay.
Copies of electronic databases used to generate memory cards, and we don't have any of that, is what they say. Okay, I'm not surprised by that.
No.
Any policy manuals? This office does not have any policy manuals controlling the actions or allowed activities of companies supplying election support services, such as LHS. Any records you have on ballot on demand systems? Well, no jurisdiction in Massachusetts uses the ballot on demand system.
Clear answer.
Okay.
Good.
Any records you have on the rules regarding optically scanned paper ballots? Who creates them? How they're tracked? We have many documents responsive to this portion of the request. Estimate 200 pages at $40. So they want to bill us $140. Well, I want to look at them.
No, 40. Oh,
No, $140. So I want to look at them and see if there's anything worth paying for. Well, I know how to skim them because I've read a lot of them myself. I'm actually a member of the board of directors of Black Box Voting, so I'm very familiar with the certification reports. Look, if you have, how easy is it for you to produce like the newer ones versus older ones? I mean, do you have it all in one file?
They're not necessarily in order. They're in
Right.
alphabetical order.
Okay.
So
Well, is there a small conference room we could use? And
I
just
unfortunately don't have a conference room available. We
Okay,
scheduled them.
can I look at them here?
You can look at them standing here at the counter. I just
Okay.
They have to stay in public view.
Sure.
So, and I'll have to-
Well, can I take them back to this chair at least, no further?
I need to have them up here so we can watch them.
Gotcha. Okay, that's
I can
fine.
have them right
That's
here for
fine.
you.
That's fine. Thank you. How elections are conducted state by state. We're going to be moving through the primaries this year and covering about a dozen, possibly a little more states. We've been looking at Massachusetts a little differently in light of the recent Senate special election. And we've learned a few things that we feel we have to put on the record somewhere. We've been largely stymied in terms of public records access, and we're a little concerned by that. But we have learned a few things. Your elections don't allow for a hand count.
Yes. I did say it was James Marsh.
Yeah, from Tucson, Arizona. Okay. Your election process doesn't allow for any hand audits after the machines count the votes. So once the machines have scanned the ballots in, that's it, done, unless it's nail-biter close. That's a problem because you don't have, your own town's election people don't have a lot of control over how your election operates. When we were talking to your assistant, to the town clerk in charge of elections, she was saying, oh, we don't use Diebold election systems. We use the AccuVote, excuse me. Well, AccuVote is a Diebold brand name. Diebold stopped putting their own corporate name on the voting machines a few years ago, apparently out of embarrassment. But it concerns us that your town staff handling elections don't really understand what election hardware they're looking at. LHS Associates programs your voting machines, delivers them here, and helps you run the election. From our point of view, as we see it in this town and in every other place we've looked across Massachusetts, LHS is in control, potentially, of who wins and who loses elections in this state. Unequivocally, I can say that. If you don't believe me, go to YouTube, search within YouTube for the words LHS and Associates. Take a look at the first 2 videos that appear from my organization, Black Box Voting, out of Seattle. Those 2 videos will show you that, first they'll show you some statements made by LHS authorities. And then it will show you clips from an HBO documentary titled Hacking Democracy from a few years ago, in which voting machines identical to what you use here in Framington were tested in Leon County, Florida, and it was proven that they can be electronically rigged. Put simply, there's an electronic ballot box inside that voting machine that is pre-programmed for how to count the vote. In other words, what the precincts are, what the candidates are, what the races are all about. The contents electronically of that memory card can be rigged, well, pre-stuffed is the best way to put it, so that there's negative votes already on it for one candidate and positive votes for another. And yes, it can be set up this way so that it will pass a logic and accuracy test, but manipulate actual election results. This is factual. You need to take a look at those videos. Again, YouTube, LHS Associates. Ask your election officials how much control over the contents of that memory card LHS Associates has, and then you need to be very, very concerned. Thank you.
John Brakey.
Yeah.
That's correct pronunciation. Also from Tucson, Arizona.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I just want to say it's an honor to be back in New England after being gone for 35 years. My mother was born in Massachusetts. I was raised in Maine, and I lived in Tucson. I got 3 wonderful children. I got 4 grandchildren that motivate me to come out here on this tour and do this. You know, when I walked into the hall up there, I saw the names, what happened in the Civil War to Americans who fought for this country, what happened in the 1820s, you know, the history of this building, the names out there, it really moved me. And I'm here to tell you that the default system, we've been in litigation in Tucson, Arizona for years about problems. In fact, through the litigation, it came out that the system is fatally flawed. Working with Microsoft Access, it's very easy to go ahead and manipulate, okay? I know they're not using tabulators, and that's good, okay? But the memory cards get programmed, and they could do things. I want to say next is that I'm in contact with activists that were involved in this election, and there was an incident that happened in Precinct 6 election night. And I would urge you to go ahead and look into that. I don't have much time to go into it here, but I will leave you documents or talk to somebody or tomorrow get together on this. I'm also disappointed in the transparency that we went to the clerk's office and in here. We asked certain questions, and I said, geez, could you at least tell me how many absentee ballots there was? And she said to me, no, I don't know. And then I looked and I find in the newspaper, the Metro West Daily in Farmington, Assistant Counter Lisa Ferguson, who's the one I talked to, said she was hoping for a 50% turnout, and her office received more than 1,100 absentee ballots. Let me ask her, I think that she could have said to me, I can't give you that, or she could have I don't like being misled. When it's in the newspaper, I find it afterwards. The people who came here election night for transparency were abused, okay? I want to file that, put this documents here. And all they were doing was showing character, capacity, credibility. They used civility, they used love of country, pride in citizenship, and they showed courage to do what we used to do back in the old days. I mean, let's face it. Yeah, we all know that voting is a secret process. Counting must be a public process. 71 municipalities in this town, in this state, did hand count because they don't use machines. Statistically, they came out more for the Democratic candidate, okay? We had broken down all of the counties, and the statistics are very hard to understand. They have a turnout as low as 28% in one municipality and 77% on the other. Is not a normal part of elections, and we work with statistics, and we just want to build a relationship with you, find who to work with, and we can help follow up. We're hooked up with the right scientists, but those people who have their names out there counting on vigilance from somebody, I hope that you all are going to be part of that vigilance, because we're not here to do that. We have to use you. And I thank you so much for your time.
I'm not going to believe it.
Any questions? I'm sorry.
No, no questions.
Thank you very much, sir.
Comments.
Okay.
It's Framingham, Massachusetts, Framingham.
Yeah.
So to come into Framingham and try to give statistics to this board to a town clerk's office that does a fantastic job in elections, not relating to the town, very disappointed. For someone that's worked in municipalities and statistics, to not know the name of the town that you came from, lost a lot of credibility with myself. In regards to I know exactly the call you got. I can tell you the person, I'm not going to put it in public, I know the person who made the call. I've talked to the town clerk about this call as well. You at least had the audacity to tell the board why you were here and didn't beat around the bush, which I certainly appreciate. If there were, system problems on that end, I'm sure our town clerk's office will take a look at it. They have the most integrity, and hopefully you can leave the room understanding that they do a great job for the town. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any comments?
I'd like to make a motion to echo this. I think we need to give confidence. I don't really like folks coming in and not having the town clerk and the assistant town clerk and attribute comments to them without them being here. I think it's disservice. And knowing them both personally and professionally, they do an absolutely outstanding job in this election for the town, as Mr. Smith said. So I'd like to go on record and like to make a motion that we support the town clerk in her endeavor and their staff's endeavor.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. We don't even know who you are. We don't know who you represent. If you come in and start disparaging our town clerk and our assistant town clerk with no backup material, nothing in writing, we can't accept that. And you should also know that election laws are run by the state.
That's Secretary of State.
The Secretary of State's office, and we as a Board of Selectmen do not have any jurisdiction over how elections are run. And if you have a beef with the way the elections are run, you should take it to the Secretary of State's office, and not come before the Board of Selectmen without any backup material and make allegations about town employees that can't be substantiated.
We made no allegations.
Well,
we just
you said that you tried to get information and you were misled. That's an allegation against our employees, and we don't operate that way around here.
There's a technical question about the equipment that we use.
Yes.
And this needs to be brought to the attention of the Secretary of State of Commonwealth.
Well, it's not so much a matter of the equipment. Ma'am, it's not the equipment. It's your vendor is the biggest concern at this point. You guys hired
For whatever
LHS.
reason, that fits into the equipment that we own. But I think, as everyone has said, this is not the level. We don't buy it, we don't manage it, but we do stand by the integrity of our employees. So, we've heard you, we've had more than the 3 minutes, and let's just leave it at that. I do have a motion in front of me.
Been seconded.
Yes.
Heavily seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous vote for the President voting. Okay, Fred Wallace?